Okay, so we should all know what PragerU is. If you don't, I'll help you along that path. Also, please tell me how you don't know what PragerU is, because I really, really, really want to live in your planet. Like, it seriously, it baffles my mind when some people are like, well, I don't know what PragerU is, and I'm like, how? Oh my god. So, yes, please, 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 please tell me. Tell me about it. I would love to know what your secret is. But for those of you who don't know, it is a LARPing, effectively LARPing YouTube channel that puts itself off and says, well, they're called PragerU because they're Prager University is what they say, and they're funded by one Dennis Prager, or at least on the surface, they're said to led by Dennis Prager, but it's actually funded by a ton of billionaire money, because billionaires want to see the status quo remain, and PragerU wants to see the status quo remain. You know, like, I'm sure that if billionaires could go back to the 1920s, they would. But they put out videos basically every day. And I saw a really interesting one that I actually wanted to talk about. And it has to do with one of our favorite shitty comedians, Ricky Gervais.
No other campaign.
Let me get... So, the video is loading. I have... there's an ad on it, and I'm not really...
Been powered
oh
by
my
the
God.
people. The silent heroes of
No
America.
one cares. Done. Okay. Okay. So, Ricky Gervais, for those of you who don't remember, a couple years ago, it wasn't even a couple years ago, maybe it was like last year or 2 years ago or something, basically went out and started doing a stand-up special on Netflix where he just goes out and starts attacking trans women. Like, not even just like a little bit, like a lot. Excuse me. And he, effectively in a part of this, oh yeah, also look at this, these suggested YouTube videos with, Ben the Man Shapiro. God, probably actually Ben the Short Man Shapiro. Normally all men are kings, however, it is appropriate to make fun of Ben Shapiro for his height. I just want you to know that. And it's just Ben Shapiro. It's really no one else but Ben Shapiro. Like, anyone else? No, don't do that. Ben Shapiro, please do that. But Ricky Gervais, I'm sorry, I can't talk, got into a huge amount of trouble. Like, he had to go to court over all this stuff. It was not a small deal, and there was a lot of people that were upset at him for very good reason. Apparently now he's been contacted by PragerU to talk about why censoring speech is dangerous. So, let's listen to the bullshit, and I'm going to break it down.
It's a really weird thing that there's this new trendy myth that people who want free speech want it to say awful things all the time. It's just...
Okay, false. False. No one's saying that free speech always says awful things all the time. However, what people are saying is that free speech should not mean freedom from consequences. And it's a very important thing to realize. If I were to go out and I were to start saying absolutely abhorrent things, I would 100% expect to face consequences for those actions. And that's what happened to Ricky Gervais, which is why he's going off on this tirade. And he's been a huge free speech warrior the past few years. And that's in air quotes, by the way, because it's ridiculous that he actually thinks that there's some sort of, like, attack on free speech. It's not. It's not happening. What they're doing is they're holding you accountable for the things you say and for the harm you do.
Isn't true. It protects everyone. But the two...
Now, he's saying it protects everyone, and it is true that free speech does protect everyone, but it protects everyone only from government censorship. It doesn't actually protect you from, being held accountable for the words you say. And that's the big problem that Ricky Gervais doesn't happen to see here. He only sees it, oh my god, I was attacked. I can't do the stupid accent. He only says, oh my god, I was attacked because I made fun of people for being trans. And that's his problem. Like, that is his problem here.
catastrophic problems with the term hate speech is, one, what constitutes hate speech?
Easy. Hate speech is anything that is derivative or attacking or promoting violence against someone for a status that is not by their choice. Hate speech can be making fun of or attacking someone because their skin tone. Hate speech can be making fun of or attacking someone because their sexual orientation. Hate speech can be even based on religion, and the reason why we cover religion, even though that technically gets into this weird gray area of choice, is for the very real reason that for separation of church and state, we have to basically ensure religious rights to all, else we run the risk of one religion taking over. So basically, that's a neutrality standpoint. So even though it is a mutable characteristic, where everything else is unmutable, it's there for a non. I don't remember the name. I've used the term last weekend. It's there for a non-theocratical government, which is why that's important. But basically, hate speech is, attacking someone or using words to harm people for an immutable aspect to their lives, or going through and saying, like, well, we should do, take Trump supporters, and if I were to say, well, we should round up all the Trump supporters and put them in cages. No, absolutely. I mean, that, it kind of gets into a weird ethical issue there, because I don't actually, because while that's not an immutable thing, and that's, but that's a large discriminatory thing against an entire group of people, where instead it's more important to focus on their actions and say, okay, why are they having a problem? Because not actively engaging in hate speech is actively calling for harm to happen. And that's where that would be calling for harm to happen.
Everyone disagrees. There is no consensus on what hate speech is, right?
There absolutely is a consensus. There is a definition. That's let's show you that there's a definition. So, public speech that expresses hate or encourages violence toward a person or group based on something such as race, religion, sex, or sexual orientation. There's your definition. That is what hate speech is. That is absolutely a hard defined status. That is hate speech. That is how we look at this and say this is hate speech.
And two, who decides? And there's the real rub, because obviously the people who think they want to close down free speech because it's bad.
This is a very common, extreme right-wing talking point that you don't like free speech. You must be a fascist. Even though I'm the person who advocates for fascist ideology. Because this is a myth. This is absolutely a myth. And it's really important you understand this, because when you're looking at something like this, people who are holding you accountable aren't saying you don't have a right to free speech. What they're saying is you don't have a right to talk however you want without consequences. And I don't think that's actually a bad thing. I don't think it's bad to hold people accountable for their actions and their words and all that fun stuff, because it's important we do that. It's important we take the time to go through and have that conversation and understand what all of that means. It's incredibly important that we know that. And a lot of people just are like, well, it doesn't bother me. I don't know why you're talking to me about this. And they think that they're somehow above it all, and they're not responsible for anything that they're doing and all this other fun stuff. So, yeah, it's and that's basically what he's getting at. He's saying, well, you're closing down my free speech by not letting me hate on people. That's the point he's getting at.
The fascist. It's a really weird, mixed up idea that these people hide behind the shield of goodness. We're good. We're social justice. We're doing this for good, and what we say goes.
So now, this is another common talking point where, oh, well, the woke social justice people are all bad and evil, and they're getting on me for hating people, and the thing is no one's saying that, no one's saying that you can't hold those opinions. We would like it if you don't. We would like it if you not be a shithead. But what people are saying is words and actions have meaning. We want you to understand what that meaning is and what the utility effect of those words and those actions and that speech is. Because it's very important that you see that. It's very important that you understand what's going on. If you don't understand what's going on, if you don't understand the consequences or potential, ramifications from your words and your actions, then, excuse me, you are no better than the people, you are basically no better than a Nazi, because that's what happened with, and I'm not trying to, do this, whatever law, we're drawing equivalences to Nazis and stuff, but I mean, it's basically the sentiment. If you're trying to say I shouldn't be held accountable, well then, at what point in time, hi, Whiskey Cleric, I am a leftist. Specifically, I advocate for, libertarian socialism, but not that shitty American libertarianism. Anyway, so basically what he's trying to say here and what he's trying to get at is that he's, like, somehow being oppressed, which he's absolutely not. It's ridiculous to think that.
And they don't realise how corrupt and wrong that is. It is mob rule, and I think that's what would compromise the comedy. Not that some people wouldn't.
Now, they're saying it's mob rule. The mob decides what happens, blah, blah, blah. Is it that? Or is it just that people kind of understand that hating people or making fun of people for stuff like gender identity is wrong? I mean, that's a pretty non-spicy take there. I don't think that's really hard to say. I don't think you're going to find anyone that's like, oh my god, you don't hate someone based on their gender identity? What's wrong with you? Like, that's a non-spicy take. Let's be honest.
Love it and get it. It's that the
libertarian socialism. Libertarian socialism means I want to protect liberties for the highest number of people, and I also want the workers to own the means of production and own the means of their own labor, which does not currently happen under capitalism. Not Ricky. He should have stayed with his comedy career in Liberty City. No, he's never even been a good comedian. Let's be honest here. Like, he's done a few movies that were his voice is all right, but he's never been
in charge would be bullied. Let's not forget, there are loads of caveats to free speech already, but I agree with all of them. Libel, slander.
And again, like, getting at these caveats such as, yeah, but okay, was his GTA 4 cameo him, or was that the game and the writers for the game? Like libel, slander, all this other shit. Like, yeah, we agree that you can't use a, platform to speak untruths on, like, a large media platform and all of a sudden start driving libel. But here's the thing. No one's arguing that that's wrong. No one's accusing you of that. Like, they're accusing you of hating people, and that's why you're upset. Okay, I didn't realize it was in a virtual. I've never really played much GTA, so I'll be honest. I have GTA 5. I played a little bit of 4. Played a lot of 3 back in the day, but hey, I was 12 or 11 or something, and who didn't play GTA back then when 3 came out?
Sheds, protection of children's rights, food additives, all these things are already in place. What's not in place and what's never should be in place is that you mustn't say something that someone somewhere might find offensive. Okay,
here's the thing. No one's saying that you can't say things that are offensive. Hell, I'm an edgy leftist. I love making edgy jokes. Now, I don't do that a lot on stream because I don't stream a ton. But would some people find those offensive? Oh, hell yeah. However, no one's saying you can't do that. What they're saying is you can't incite violence and hate people, or basically call for open remarks of saying, well, all trans people are just confused and they just don't matter and they should all be institutionalized. Or whatever. I don't remember what his exact, joke was, but it was just that's what people are saying. That's what people are saying you shouldn't do. It's just you shouldn't be able to go off and start saying stuff as The someone somewhere might find this offensive narrative oddly enough resembles the edgy joke and private thing that Destiny was paneling about for a while. Okay, so it's funny that you mentioned that because I actually I follow Vosh, and from what I understand, I'd like Destiny, but I don't know if Destiny's political ideology and mine set aside. But I don't know. I got to give him a shot. But yeah, no, like I will say, and a lot of it is I cater my jokes to the audience I'm sitting there with. Like I'll make, really shitty jokes about, I'm trying to think of like a good example, and nothing's coming to my head. But I'll make really stupid, shitty jokes about religion and whatever. Like okay, priests are pedophiles. Like I'll make that joke all the time. But like, I'm not talking shit about Destiny. Oh yeah. No. I'm not talking shit about him either. I'm just saying like but that's kind of where I get it from is what I'm saying. Like I'll make jokes about that, even though religion's a protected class. But like, would people be upset if I was like, if I make jokes about being like, a Satanist, like, I'm all going to hell. Let's go on the fast track to Satan Town. Yeah, people are gonna get upset, and they're gonna find that offensive. But I don't care. You can make those kind of jokes. What we're saying you can't do is you can't be like, I'm making a joke about wanting to institutionalize all trans people or wanting to, discriminate against some minority group and stuff like that. That's what we're saying you can't do because that has actual real world consequences and real world harm being done in that statement.
Because someone somewhere will find everything offensive.
Yeah, that happens. Everything you say will be offensive to someone. And guess what? It's punching down has always been heavily frowned upon. Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. And that's what he's doing. He's punching down. Like, it's not even like... And it's like, you're right. Punching down is like a non-funny thing to do because it's you want to punch up or punch across or something like that, and it's not or take like the self-masochism stuff about it. But yeah, like when you're stepping on people who are already getting stepped on, is like everyone agrees it's not funny, it's not a good thing to do, it's not a good look on any of us. Like, come on.
And as I've said so many times, just because you're offended, it doesn't mean you're right.
Also, I want to just say by all of this, he's right here. Just because you're offended, that doesn't mean you're right. Ricky Gervais, I want you to listen to this part, and I want you to listen. Someone can please clip this, and put this on Twitter and tweet at him all day until he responds. Just because you're offended does not mean you're right. Just because you're offended that people thought your speech was offensive, and that you can't make fun of marginalized groups of people, that doesn't mean you're right. It doesn't mean you're right to do so. It doesn't mean that you're objectively in the correct statement here. What it means is you're a contradictory dickhole.
And now I don't want to be lumped in with those celebrities who lecture people, who think they're...
Okay, but you're already doing that. We've already thought you were one of those celebrities who lecture people. Hell, your entire job prior to becoming a politician was standing on stage and lecturing people, but trying to be funny at it and failing miserably. Like, that's what a stand-up comedian does. You kind of just lecture people for an hour. I mean, granted, it's not as bad as a lecture because you should be actually funny, and it shouldn't just be people wishing that they would have stayed home and spent $60 on, I don't know, a mediocre dinner at mediocre dinner and drinks at Applebee's. Well, he is trying to enter politics. I think he's just a talking head at this point, but the point that I'm getting at is that he's saying that lecturing people is bad when, stand-up comedians kind of sit on a stage, and it's a reference to how stand-up comedians and all that stuff works.
Above everything, just because they've got a platform. I mean,
okay, but again, you're another person who has a platform. You're another person who takes advantage of people with platforms, who thinks that everyone that you go to has to be. Oh, thank you so much for the follow. I really appreciate that. I hope you enjoy the content. I'm actually going to be changing one little thing after this segment here, but if you do want to keep seeing some of this. No, Trump did terrible in the Axios interview. Like, He did fucking awful. But yeah, no, it's absolutely ridiculous. But hey, Mark Havas, if you want to watch some of my content, if you type in the chat !! YouTube, you can see my YouTube channel, a bunch of other stuff out on there, so that's always fun. But yeah, no, Ricky Gervais doesn't really like
works both ways.
see any of
And
this.
The worry now is social media amplifies everything.
So social media does amplify everything. It doesn't really like necessarily amplify the voice, but it amplifies the spread, and that's actually a good thing. That's a good thing because that means we're not like. It means that we're not sitting in a society where we don't see this stuff spread, where we see what's happening, and we can actually understand the very real consequences of the actions. Like, if it weren't for social media, we wouldn't know half the shit we do about a lot of the shit that happens. And I'll take, I'll take Dr. Disrespect, for example. And I'm not saying... so, first of all, we don't know what happened with Dr. Disrespect. No one's been coming forward. But if it wasn't for social media, we wouldn't know that he switched over to YouTube. That's not a problem. That's just the truth. It happens. It's how the information spreads. We're now living in a high retentive information era, and it's really, really, really important to understand that. If you know what happened, but you're not allowed to say, cool. I kind of doubt it, but cool, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, so let's go ahead and finish this.
If you're mildly left-wing on Twitter, you're suddenly Trotsky.
No one's saying that. If you're mildly left-wing, you're suddenly Trotsky. No one's actually even arguing for that position. People are saying if you're mildly well, I mean, I will say there are some people on Twitter who extremely woke scold, and listen, that we're gonna get into that in a little bit here. We're gonna be having a nice conversation on that. Not woke scolds in general, but we're gonna be getting to that.
Right, and if you're mildly conservative, you're Hitler.
No one's saying if you're mildly conservative, you're Hitler. People are saying if you are extremely far right and extremely, like, if you're like an alt-right person, yeah, I could easily defend a comparison to say that person is ideologically similar to Hitler, or at least adjacent to, if not similar. Like, I could easily see that. Thank you. I hope you have a great day. But yeah, I could easily defend that statement. Like, but if you're I know people who are mildly conservative, and they're not. I don't compare them to, Hitler, because it's a false comparison. It doesn't do anything to improve the dialectic. In fact, I would actually I'm someone who I would be willing to, and I can work with these people on a lot of issues. Like, we were talking about an education system the other day, where we were like, how cool would it be? And really, what needs to happen is if we had public access channels that were streaming education and being like, this channel is for this age, this channel is for this age, this channel is for this age, and then during the day they play, educational videos like talking about math, English, social studies, stuff like that. And then at night and in the evening they can play cartoons and all that other fun stuff to help us with the pandemic. And that's something that we've had very good conversations and very good discussions. First of all, we need to keep religion out of school unless you're learning about it in an empirical sense as a scholarly understanding of it. So, like, if I'm sitting here and I'm learning about what Christianity believes, that's fine. However, prayer in school has no place because school is publicly funded. And that's a huge thing that a lot of people just don't quite agree with. But if it's a state funded thing, it needs to be kept out.
And if you're centrist and you look at both arguments, you're a coward.
Okay, you're right, but the point that I'm getting at in this one here is that wasn't the conversation, because we actually agreed on a solution. We didn't just agree on a problem. We agreed that said, hey, basically what they're teaching in schools now, math, English, hard sciences, social studies, all that kind of stuff, like history. We agreed on that. If they're coming to me and they're saying like 6K-year-old world and weird anti-science stuff, no, we're not agreeing on that, and that's not something I would come through and say, oh yeah, I agree with you and I'm going to work with you on this. No, it's only if we're agreeing on the actual solution. But yeah, so let me catch this last bit of it. Okay, so the whole if you're a centrist, you're a coward. That little last thing he said. No one's actually calling centrists cowards. No one's saying that centrists are a bad thing. What people are saying is this idea of enlightened centrism and all this fun stuff that goes along with that isn't inherently productive to the conversation. It's not inherently it's not inherently something that we're actively pushing forward, because there's a very, very, very large difference between going through and saying, well, both sides are the same, because they're not. And that's what we're actively fighting. Oh, thank you so much for the follow, Riding with Biden. Hope you're enjoying the content here. But that's what we're saying. Like, you can't actually make an objective statement saying, well, both sides are the same, when you have, and I'll just use the milquetoast American political system with some of the more milquetoast stances and milquetoast candidates. If you're drawing a comparison between someone who's advocating for, Medicare for all, and someone who's advocating for a reduction of private health care, or a reduction of Medicaid, those are two completely things. Those aren't a both sides argument. That's what people are saying. That I do. If you type !YouTube, you can find that in the chat. You can find my link to my YouTube, and I'll actually be taking all of these videos and clipping them onto YouTube, or these segments, I should be saying. And so you'll actually have that, and I kind of did a video on the horseshoe theory, and I really want to redo that, because the audio was bad, but I really liked how I went through that. So I'm probably going to redo that video at some point. But it's really important to understand that no one's against centrism. No one's against people in the center. And actually, I think the people in the center are a good thing to have, especially in a political discussion, because that's going to be the people who are going to tend to sway both ways, and they're going to be people who can they're going to sway one way on one thing and one way on another thing, and they're going to be able to help build those bridges and be like, hey, you think this is good, you think this is good, we all like this, let's all go and do this kind of stuff. And that's the point. Hey, how's it going, Granny and me? And that's the point. No one's saying centrists are bad. What we're saying is when you draw false equivalencies, that is bad, because there is no equivalence between all of this.